They called me a thief at my billionaire grandfather's will, reading right there in front of everyone who ever pretended to love me. My cousin Brittany stood up first, designer heels planted like she owned the room. "Sophia doesn't deserve a penny," she announced, pointing at me as if I was something sticky on the bottom of her shoe. My father didn't stop her. He nodded. Whispers snapped through the mansion's library like dry branches. My aunt clutched her pearls. My brother stared at the floor. And then the word hit me sharp. Humiliating, final, thief. I didn't even get to defend myself before the attorney, Mr. Caldwell, calmly closed the folder and said, "Your grandfather expected this." He turned his laptop toward the big screen. And in that instant, the air changed, like the whole family realized the same terrifying truth at the same time. Because the camera was already rolling. My grandfather's mansion had a way of making you feel small even if you'd grown up inside it. The day of the will reading, the library looked like it belonged in a museum. Walnut shelves, old-world globes, leather chairs no one sat in unless a lawyer told them to. A fire crackled softly, more for atmosphere than warmth. Outside, the winter sun sat low and pale, shining through tall windows like it was afraid to touch anything. Everyone was dressed like grief had a dress code. Brittany wore black, but it was the kind of black that came with a brand name and a confident smirk. My Aunt Diane kept dabbing at her eyes with a tissue that never seemed to get wet. My father, Mark, sat at the head of the seating arrangement like he was already practicing ownership. And me? I sat in the corner chair Mr. Caldwell had indicated, hands folded tightly in my lap so no one would see them shaking. I hadn't been back here since the funeral. Back then, people hugged me and said, "He loved you," but the words slid off them like oil. Because in my family, love wasn't a feeling. It was a currency, and everyone wanted to know the exchange rate. Mr. Caldwell set his briefcase on the desk. He looked neutral, not cold, not kind, professional, like a man trained to keep his face steady while families fall apart. "Before we begin," he said, "Mr. Richard Hale asked that I remind you of something." Brittany's lips twitched. "Oh, here we go." Mr. Caldwell didn't take the bait. He asked me to say, "I see what you do when you think no one is watching." My throat tightened. My brother Ethan shifted, like he'd heard that sentence and suddenly remembered every time he'd lied to Grandpa about visiting. Diane laughed too brightly. "That sounds like Richard. Always dramatic." My father leaned back. "Let's not waste time, Caldwell. We're all busy." Busy grieving? Busy fighting? Busy calculating? I stared at the ceiling, willing myself to stay calm. Because the truth was, I was already tired. Tired of being the one who showed up. Tired of being the one who answered Grandpa's late-night calls when his hands shook too much to open a pill bottle. Tired of being the only person in this room who knew what his laugh sounded like when no one was trying to impress him. Mr. Caldwell opened the folder anyway. "I am going to read Mr. Hale's last will and testament," he began. And the room leaned forward as one body, like a pack of wolves hearing a gate click open. I swallowed. I told myself, whatever happens, stay steady. But I didn't know that within minutes they'd try to bury me with a single word, and I didn't know my grandfather had planned for exactly that. If you only saw my family at funerals and weddings, you'd think we were close, that we loved each other fiercely, that we were the kind of family people envied. But I knew the truth. My grandfather, Richard Hale, didn't just have money, he had power. The kind that made people return calls instantly. The kind that made local politicians suddenly free for dinner. The kind that made my relatives orbit him like planets desperate for heat. After Grandma passed, Grandpa got quieter. Not weaker, just quieter. Like he'd stopped wasting words on people who didn't deserve them. That's when I started visiting every Sunday. At first, it was small things. Grocery runs, sorting mail, teaching him how to use video calls so he could see my face without having to pretend he understood the buttons. Then it became bigger things. "Can you read this email? Can you tell me what this form means? Can you sit with me for a minute? The house feels too large today." I wasn't there for money. I was there because he was my grandfather, and I loved him. But to Brittany? To Diane? To my father? My devotion looked like strategy. Brittany used to sweep in twice a year Christmas, and Grandpa's birthday, always carrying an expensive gift bag and always leaving before dessert. She'd kiss his cheek like she was collecting evidence of affection. "Love you, Grandpa," she'd sing, then glance at her phone. Ugh, traffic downtown is going to be a nightmare. It is about the said. My Aunt Diane visited when she needed something, usually a signature. My father? My father visited when there were witnesses. He'd sit in Grandpa's study, voice warm and rehearsed. Dad, you know I'm here for you. Then Grandpa would mention a charity project or an investment opportunity, and my father's eyes would light up like he'd spotted a loophole. Yeah, he'd say, leaning in. Let's talk numbers. And Grandpa would look at me, just a quick glance that said, "You see it too, don't you?" I did. The last time I saw Grandpa alive, he was in his favorite chair by the window, wearing that old gray sweater Grandma used to tease him about. His hands looked thinner than I remembered, but his eyes were sharp. "Soph," he said, patting the armrest. "Sit." I sat. He studied my face like he was memorizing it. "They'll behave at the will reading," he said. I laughed, thinking he was joking. "Sure they will." He didn't laugh back. Then he said softly, "People don't become greedy after someone dies. They just stop pretending." I felt my stomach dip. "Grandpa, don't..." He lifted a hand. "Promise me something, anything." "When they come for you," he said, voice calm as glass, "don't fight them in the way they want. Don't scream, don't beg, don't plead." I frowned. Why would they come for me? His gaze didn't move. "Because you're the one who was here. And in their minds, that means you must have taken something." I opened my mouth. He leaned closer, barely a whisper. "Let the truth do the talking." I remember thinking, he's tired, he's imagining problems. But on the day of the will reading, sitting in that library full of polished wood and polished smiles, I realized my grandfather wasn't imagining anything. He was predicting, and he was preparing. Mr. Caldwell adjusted his glasses and began. "To my son, Mark Hale." My father straightened, shoulders back, like the words were applause. "I leave the sum of $200,000 and my father's pocket watch." My father blinked. 200? Brittany's head snapped toward him, eyes narrowed. Diane's lips parted slightly. Ethan's brows lifted. My father tried to smile. "That's generous," Mr. Caldwell continued before anyone could argue. "To my daughter, Diane Hale." My aunt inhaled sharply. "I leave my Aspen cabin for her personal use for 5 years, at which point it will be sold and the proceeds placed into the Hale Community Trust." Diane's face froze, like her skin couldn't decide between outrage and panic. 5 years? She repeated too loudly. Mr. Caldwell's pen paused over the paper. "Yes." He moved on. "To my grandson, Ethan Hale." Ethan sat up, hopeful. "I leave $30,000 and my record collection, on the condition that he completes his degree and maintains employment for 12 consecutive months." Ethan's mouth opened, then closed. He wasn't offended, he was exposed. My cousin Brittany kept tapping her nails against her clutch. Tap, 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 like time was something she owned. Mr. Caldwell flipped a page. "To my granddaughter, Brittany Hale." Brittany lifted her chin, a smile already forming. "I leave $10,000 and 1 bronze horse statue from my office." The smile fell clean off her face. "What?" Brittany squeaked. 10,000? Is that a typo?" My father's nostrils flared. Diane hissed. "Richard." "Mr." Caldwell didn't flinch. "Please allow me to continue." Brittany's cheeks flushed. "That's insulting." Mr. Caldwell turned another page. "The remainder of my estate." The room held its breath. "Including my primary residence, all remaining financial assets, and the contents of my private security vault." My heartbeat thudded in my throat. "Will be left to..." Brittany shot to her feet so fast her chair scraped the floor. "No," she said, voice sharp. "Before you say it, everyone needs to hear the truth." My father didn't tell her to sit. He watched her like a man watching a tool he planned to use. Brittany pointed at me, arm stiff. "Sophia doesn't deserve a penny." Diane gasped theatrically. "Brittany, honey." "No," Brittany snapped. "I'm done pretending. We all know what's been happening." Mr. Caldwell's eyes lifted. Calm, patient, like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. Brittany's voice rose. "Grandpa's things started disappearing months ago. The diamond cufflinks, the watch collection, that signed baseball. And guess who was here every single week?" Her finger didn't move. It stayed locked on me like a laser. My stomach turned cold. My father finally spoke. "Brittany," he said, voice measured. "Let her talk." "Let me talk?" He sounded generous. But his eyes said something else. "Go ahead, Sophia. Make it worse for yourself." I looked around the room. Ethan wouldn't meet my gaze. Diane's mouth was tight, her disappointment already forming, like she'd decided my guilt before the evidence arrived. Brittany's smile sharpened. She had access. She had passwords. She had time alone with him. And if you case supprivating the breasts, my hands clenched in my lap. I forced my voice steady. "That's not true." Brittany laughed. "Oh, please. You're a scholarship girl who married into nothing and teaches what? Middle school? You really expect us to believe you didn't see an opportunity?" The insult landed, hot and humiliating. My father's voice came again, softer. "Sophia, did you take anything from your grandfather?" It wasn't a question. It was a trap, and the room leaned in to watch me fall into it. I stared at my father like I didn't recognize him. "Dad," I said carefully. "You know me." He didn't answer. Brittany crossed her arms. "Say it louder. Tell everyone you didn't take anything." My Aunt Diane stood, shaking her head like she was devastated. "Sophia, sweetheart, if you made a mistake, now is the time to confess. Confess." Like the word itself could make the lie real. I felt my cheeks burn. "I didn't take anything. I helped Grandpa. That's all." Brittany scoffed. "Right, you helped." Then she turned to the room like she was presenting a case. "Let's be logical. Grandpa kept valuables in the house. Items started disappearing. Who had consistent access? Sophia." My father nodded slowly. "It's concerning." "Concerning?" I echoed, a bitter laugh threatening to escape. "That's your word? Concerning?" Ethan finally spoke, voice uncertain. "Soph, did Grandpa ever give you something? Like permission to take anything?" I stared at him. "No. And even if he did, why are you asking like I'm guilty?" He flinched. "I'm just trying to understand." Diane sighed, hands clasped. "Sweetheart, this isn't personal. It's about the estate. If items are missing, it affects everyone." There it was. Not grief, not trust, not family. The estate? Brittany tilted her head. "Also, funny thing. Someone from my friend group said they saw you at an upscale pawn shop." My heart dropped. I had been there once because my grandfather asked me to help him appraise a few items for insurance. We'd gone together. He'd laughed the whole time, teasing the appraiser's bow tie. But in this room, with Brittany's eyes gleaming, the truth didn't sound clean. It sounded like an excuse. My father's jaw tightened. "A pawn shop?" "Dad," I said sharply. "Grandpa was with me." Brittany pounced. "Oh, sure. Convenient. Grandpa was with you. Can he confirm that now?" Silence slammed down. I felt something in me crack, not loudly, not dramatically, but like a small internal collapse. Because I realized they weren't confused. They weren't investigating. They were deciding. Mr. Caldwell remained still, watching it unfold as if he were taking notes for a larger plan. Brittany took another step forward. "She doesn't deserve a penny," she repeated, louder. "And if Grandpa left her anything, we contest the will. We argue he was manipulated." Diane gasped. "Manipulated? Richard? Impossible." My father's voice was calm. "People deteriorate in the end, Diane." I whipped my head toward him. He was sharp. My father raised his eyebrows. "Was he? Or were you influencing him?" I stared at him, stunned. Brittany's grin widened. "Exactly." Ethan looked like he wanted to disappear into the carpet. I pushed my chair back and stood, legs trembling. "This is disgusting," I said, voice shaking but loud enough to cut through the whispers. "You all barely visited him. You didn't take his calls. You didn't help him. And now you stand here calling me," Brittany interrupted, almost delighted. "A thief." The word hit again, heavier this time because it came with a chorus of nods. Diane pressed her lips together. "Sophia, if you return what you took, I didn't take anything." My voice snapped, louder than I intended. The room went still, then immediately shifted into judgment, like my raised voice was proof of guilt. Brittany's eyes glittered. "See? Defensive." My father's tone softened, falsely compassionate. Sophia, we can handle this quietly if you cooperate, quietly. Like he was offering mercy. Like he wasn't the one holding the knife of accusation. I felt my hands shaking. I forced them still. Then Mr. Caldwell raised one hand slowly, deliberately. The room obeyed him without realizing it. Enough, he said. His voice was not loud. It didn't need to be. It carried authority built over decades, authority my grandfather had trusted. Everyone looked at him. Brittany folded her arms. Finally, tell her she's not getting anything. Mr. Caldwell's eyes flicked to her, then to my father, then around the room. I was instructed, he said calmly, to allow this to happen. My stomach tightened. My father narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? Mr. Caldwell closed the will folder carefully. Then he said the sentence that made the room feel suddenly colder. Your grandfather expected this. The shift was immediate. It wasn't just the words. It was the way Mr. Caldwell said them, like he wasn't surprised, like he'd been standing in the rain for hours waiting for the storm to finally arrive. Brittany laughed, but it came out brittle. Okay, and? Grandpa expected us to call out a thief? Mr. Caldwell didn't answer her right away. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a sleek laptop that looked almost insulting among the antique furniture. Diane blinked rapidly. What is that for? Mr. Caldwell set the laptop down and connected it to the large screen mounted above the fireplace installed last year, ironically, at my father's insistence. He needs modern technology, my father had said back then, like he was doing Grandpa a favor. Now my father stared at the cables with a look that wasn't curiosity. It was fear. I felt my pulse hammering. Mr. Caldwell? He glanced at me, and for the first time that day, his expression softened. Sophia, he said gently, your grandfather asked me to tell you. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. I swallowed. What does that mean? Brittany snapped. Don't talk to her like she's a victim. My father's voice sharpened. Caldwell, are you saying my father left instructions about this? Mr. Caldwell's fingers moved across the keyboard. Yes. The screen lit up with a folder labeled, Hale Evidence Archive. A strange sound came from the room, someone inhaling too fast. Diane's hand flew to her mouth. Brittany leaned forward, eyes narrowing. What is that? Mr. Caldwell clicked, and the folder opened. Inside were dozens of files, each labeled with dates and times. My father stood. Hold on. Are you recording people in this house? Mr. Caldwell's voice stayed calm. Your father recorded his own property. Perfectly legal. Brittany's voice rose. That's an invasion. Mr. Caldwell looked at her. Mr. Hale suspected he was being robbed. Silence. The word robbed landed like a heavy book dropped onto a table. Brittany's cheeks drained of color, then flushed again. That doesn't mean anything. He was paranoid. Old people get paranoid. My father's gaze snapped to Brittany. Stop talking. Brittany's mouth opened, then shut. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Mr. Caldwell turned back to the will folder and read, slowly, clearly. The remainder of my estate will be left to the person who helped me expose the thief, and who showed up when the rest of you only showed interest. Brittany scoffed. Cryptic nonsense. Mr. Caldwell's eyes lifted. Not cryptic, precise. He clicked a file. The screen switched to black, then to a camera angle of the mansion's hallway, wide, clear, time-stamped. My throat tightened as I recognized the view. That was the hallway outside my grandfather's private study. Mr. Caldwell said, this footage is from 3 months ago. Tuesday, 2:18 p.m. Tuesday. I would have been at school, teaching. On the screen, the front door opened, and Brittany walked in. Not in a holiday outfit, not dressed for a family visit. She moved fast, head down, hood up, like someone entering a place they didn't want to be seen. Diane gasped, a small, strangled sound. Brittany's voice cracked. That's not. The camera angle switched to another room, my grandfather's study. Brittany moved with practiced confidence. She went straight to the safe behind the painting, something I didn't even know existed until Grandpa showed me in the final weeks. She opened it with a code she should not have had. My father's face went rigid. How did she? Brittany spun toward him, desperate. Dad. He ignored her. Eyes locked on the screen. On the video, Brittany pulled out a velvet pouch. She dumped the contents on the desk: watches, cufflinks, a gold pen my grandfather once said was worth more trouble than it's worth. She didn't hesitate. She didn't look around. She swept them into her bag like she'd done it before. My stomach turned. Not because I was shocked, though I was, but because I remembered Brittany's voice in this very room calling me a thief with such confidence. Because she wasn't guessing. She was projecting. Mr. Caldwell paused the video. The room was so silent I could hear the fire pop. Brittany's voice came out thin. Grandpa gave me permission. Diane's eyes widened. Did he? Brittany's gaze darted. He said I could borrow things. Mr. Caldwell clicked another file. This time, the camera showed Brittany in a jewelry store security footage from a partner business, time-stamped, legal watermark in the corner. She set the cufflinks on the counter. The clerk opened a drawer of cash. Brittany signed a form and took the money. My father whispered, almost to himself, "Oh my God." I stared at the screen, numb. The humiliation I'd felt minutes ago turned into something else, heat rising in my chest, like anger finally finding oxygen. Brittany backed away from the screen, shaking her head rapidly. This is out of context. Mr. Caldwell's voice was steady. There is more. My father snapped. How much? Mr. Caldwell looked at him. We'll get there. He clicked another file. The screen now showed the kitchen, my grandfather's kitchen, where I used to make tea for him and listen to his stories. Two people sat at the table, Brittany and my father. My breath caught. My father stepped forward instinctively, like he could physically block the image. But the video was already playing. On the screen, my father leaned in, voice low, conspiratorial. Once we make them believe it's Sophia, he said, the will won't stand. Brittany nodded. Diane already suspects her. I've been feeding it gently. People love a martyr story, especially when it's me. My father's voice continued, cold and calculated. The vault alone is worth millions. If Dad leaves it to her, we contest. We claim undue influence. We say she manipulated him. Brittany laughed softly. And the missing items? My father shrugged in the video. Insurance. Chaos. A distraction. Everyone will focus on Sophia defending herself instead of asking why things were missing in the first place. My body went still. I couldn't breathe. On the screen, Brittany sipped coffee like she wasn't planning to destroy me. What about Ethan? She asked. My father smirked. Ethan will follow the crowd. He always does. My brother's face crumpled. Brittany asked. And if Caldwell tries something? My father leaned back. Caldwell works for Dad, not her. The lie was almost funny, because Mr. Caldwell stood in front of us now, calm as stone, proving exactly who he worked for. Mr. Caldwell paused the video. No one spoke, not Diane, not Ethan, not even Brittany. My father's face looked like it had been drained of blood, no drama, no gore, just the reality of a man caught inside his own words. I heard myself whisper, "You plan to ruin me." My father turned slowly, eyes wild. Sophia, listen, Brittany snapped. This is entrapment. Mr. Caldwell's voice cut through her. This is evidence. Then he added, quieter. And your grandfather made sure it would be admissible. The final click of the mouse sounded louder than a gavel. Mr. Caldwell opened one last file. This, he said, is your grandfather. The screen changed to my grandfather sitting in his favorite chair, same chair by the window, same gray sweater. He looked older than I remembered, but his eyes were sharp. Unmistakably Richard Hale. He stared straight into the camera like he was staring straight through us. If you're watching this, he said, voice calm, then I'm gone. Diane let out a small sob that sounded more like guilt than grief. My grandfather continued, I want to start with something simple. I loved my family. I loved you all. But love does not excuse betrayal. Brittany's knees seemed to wobble. She gripped the back of a chair. My father's jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jump. Grandpa's gaze didn't waver. For months, items have disappeared from my home. I knew who took them. Brittany shook her head. No. Grandpa raised a hand in the video, as if he could silence her across time. And I knew what you planned to do next, he said. My throat tightened. He turned his eyes slightly, like he was looking at me. Sophia, he said softly, and I felt something in my chest break open. You showed up. My eyes burned. You showed up when I was lonely. When I was frustrated. When I was learning how to live in a world that moves faster than an old man's hands. A small smile flickered on his face. You never asked me for money. You never asked me for favors. You asked me if I'd eaten. You asked me if I'd slept. You asked me if I wanted tea. He paused, breath steady. That's why you will have what you need to build the life you told me you dreamed about. I heard Brittany whisper, frantic. He can't? Grandpa's voice sharpened. To the ones who took from me, he said, and then tried to take something worse. Sophia's reputation, hear me clearly. The room felt like it was shrinking around us. Greed doesn't start in your hands, he said. It starts in the stories you tell yourself to justify what you do. My father's face contorted. Dad. Grandpa kept going. Mark, Brittany. You thought you were clever. Brittany flinched at hearing her name from the dead. You thought you could create a villain so the family would rally around you, Grandpa said. You chose Sophia because she is kind. Because she avoids conflict. Because she doesn't play your games. My stomach twisted. Tears blurred my vision. Grandpa's voice softened again. Sophia, sweetheart, you were never weak. You were simply decent in a room full of people who mistake decency for stupidity. Ethan made a choking sound. Oh, God. Grandpa looked back to the camera. I've already provided copies of this evidence to my attorney. And yes, law enforcement has been advised where appropriate. His video stack says. Brittany snapped. He can't do that. Mr. Caldwell didn't even glance at her. He can. He did, Grandpa continued. I want restitution. I want accountability. But I don't want this family destroyed by screaming and cruelty. He paused. I want the truth. Clean, clear, unavoidable. He leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing with that familiar look, the one that used to silence a room full of executives. So here is what will happen. My heart pounded. The person who returns what was taken, cooperates with the investigation, and makes genuine amends, will be spared the harshest consequences available. Brittany's breath hitched, like she'd been handed a lifeline and was afraid to grab it. Grandpa's voice stayed firm. The person who denies, threatens, or attempts retaliation will meet the full weight of the law. Retaliation. My skin prickled, because even now, even with evidence on the screen, I could feel my father's anger like heat. Grandpa's expression softened again. Sophia will receive the estate, including the mansion, the financial assets, and the private vault. She will also receive my legal team's support to ensure she is protected. This is not charity. This is justice. Diane collapsed back into her seat, whispering, Richard. Grandpa's eyes held the camera. To the rest of you. If you want to be in Sophia's life, you will show up. Not with demands. Not with excuses. With effort. Then he smiled, small, almost mischievous. One last thing, he said. Sophia. My breath caught. In the vault is a letter for you. It includes a plan we discussed, your community scholarship program. You told me you wanted to help kids who feel invisible, who are underestimated. Tears fell freely now. You can do it, Grandpa said gently, and you won't do it alone. The video ended. The screen went black, and for a moment no one moved. Brittany's voice broke the silence, thin and furious. This is insane. I'll sue. My father rounded on Mr. Caldwell. You're going to hand everything to her? Over a video? Mr. Caldwell's tone remained neutral. Over evidence. Over a will. Over the law. Then he added, looking directly at my father, and over your own recorded confession. My father's eyes snapped to me. I expected hatred. But what I saw was panic because he knew the game was over. And suddenly, for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one trapped. He was. The next minutes felt unreal, like the world had slowed down to force every consequence to land properly. Mr. Caldwell closed the laptop with a quiet click. I'm going to be very clear, he said. This is not a family debate. This is a legal matter. Brittany took a step forward, voice high. You can't just... Yes, Mr. Caldwell said calmly. I can. He pulled out another document thicker than the others. Mr. Hale's will contains a morality clause, he explained. Any beneficiary who steals from him, conspires to commit fraud, or attempts to frame another beneficiary forfeits their inheritance. 8. Diane stared at her hands, shaking. Mark, tell me this is a misunderstanding. My father swallowed. Diane, shut up. Ethan flinched at the harshness. Brittany's face twisted. Fine. Fine. I'll return it. I'll return everything. Just don't call the police. Mr. Caldwell nodded once. Cooperation will be noted. Then he turned slightly toward the door. Detective Rivera, he called. My breath caught. The door opened, and a woman stepped in plain clothes, calm eyes, posture like she'd seen every kind of liar 1,000 times. She didn't look aggressive. She looked prepared. Brittany staggered back. You had her waiting outside? Mr. Caldwell's voice was steady. Your grandfather did. Detective Rivera glanced around the room, taking in the faces. I'm not here to create a scene, she said evenly. I'm here to ensure no one attempts intimidation, threats, or destruction of property and evidence. My father's face hardened. This is my house. Detective Rivera held up a hand. Not as of today, Mr. Hale. He froze. I felt something shift in my spine like I'd been standing bent for years, and suddenly remembered I could straighten. Mr. Caldwell slid an envelope toward me. This is for you, Sophia, he said quietly. From your grandfather. My fingers trembled as I took it. Grandpa's handwriting, bold, familiar, stared up at me. I opened it and read silently as the room held its breath. My dearest Sophia. If you're reading this, then the wolves showed their teeth. I'm sorry you had to see it. But I'm not sorry you now know the truth. Don't let their betrayal harden you. Let it sharpen you. My throat tightened. I'm leaving you resources, and I'm leaving you protection. Use both wisely. Build what you told me you wanted to build. Make something good out of a place that once felt heavy. I swallowed hard. And remember, justice doesn't need to be cruel to be real. I looked up, eyes wet. Brittany was staring at me like I'd stolen oxygen from her lungs. My father's voice came out low, threatening without saying the forbidden words. Sophia, we can talk about this privately. Detective Rivera's gaze snapped to him. Not without counsel present. Mr. Caldwell nodded. Any communication regarding the estate goes through my office. My father's eyes flashed. You're really going to do this to your own father? Something in me steadied. I met his gaze. You did this to me first, I said. The room didn't explode into chaos the way Brittany had probably hoped. It didn't become a screaming match where she could play victim. It became something worse for them. It became official. Detective Rivera took out a small notebook. Miss Brittany Hale, you'll provide a list of items removed and the locations of any sales. Mr. Mark Hale, you'll provide financial statements related to any transactions connected to stolen property. My father stiffened. I'm not. Mr. Caldwell's voice was quiet. The alternative is a subpoena. Brittany's shoulders slumped. I'll cooperate, she whispered, eyes darting to my father. My father didn't look at her, because for once, he couldn't control the narrative. And when the narrative dies, all that's left is the truth. 6 months later, the mansion didn't feel like a weapon. It felt like a place that could breathe. I didn't keep it as a trophy. I didn't throw parties to prove a point. I didn't post dramatic photos online. I did what Grandpa and I talked about in those quiet Sunday afternoons. I turned it into something useful. The library where they called me a thief became a scholarship office and tutoring space. The long dining room where my father used to brag about legacy became a community meeting room where families could ask for legal guidance free, funded by the Hale Community Trust. And the vault? The vault held more than money. It held letters my grandfather's and my grandmother's written across decades. It held documents for a scholarship foundation already drafted and ready. It held a final note in Grandpa's blunt handwriting. Don't just inherit, build. Ethan came around slowly. At first he avoided me. Then one day he showed up with a box of old photos. I'm sorry, he said, voice rough. I didn't know what to do in that room. I didn't forgive him instantly. I didn't pretend it didn't hurt. But I nodded. Show up again, I said. That's how you make it right. Diane apologized, too tearful, dramatic, but real enough that I believed she regretted it. Brittany? Brittany returned most of what she took. Some items were gone for good. She faced consequences, legal and personal. There was no revenge fantasy, no cruelty, just accountability. She lost her perfect reputation, and for the first time, she had to live without it. My father tried to fight. He tried to threaten. He tried to pressure. He tried to paint me as ungrateful. But the law doesn't care about family titles. And Mr. Caldwell made sure I had protection restraining boundaries, official channels, documented communication, everything clean, everything enforceable. Some nights I still remembered that moment, Brittany's finger pointing, the word thief echoing, my father's silence. But then I'd walk into the tutoring room and see a kid solving a math problem with a smile like they'd finally been seen. And I'd remember Grandpa's last lesson. Truth is not just something you discover. It's something you build your life around so no one can shake it again. On the first anniversary of the will reading, I placed a cinnamon roll, Grandpa's favorite, on his grave. I did it, I whispered. The wind moved through the trees, soft and steady. And for the first time in a long time, I felt safe.